Hi, so today we're going to be talking about solving one-step equations. So our essential question is, how do you solve one-step equations? So in order to prepare ourselves for solving these types of equations, we need to first identify the types of operations. So the very first question we need to answer is, what are the operations? So obviously, these are not going to be all of the operations, but these are going to be at least the most common ones. So what are the operations? The very first one is that we're going to talk about is adding. That's one operation, add, or addition, for that matter. After addition, there is also subtraction. There is multiplication. And then there's also division. So these are the four main operations that we are going to be talking about. And ones that are similar, we have addition and subtraction. And then we also have multiplication with division. All right, now that we know what the operations are that we are talking about, now we're going to talk about what does inverse operation mean. So a lot of the time in this video and just in the future, you're going to hear me say or hear your teacher say, what is the inverse operation of this problem? So inverse operation is simply put as an operation that reverses the effect. It's an operation that reverses the effect of another operation. In other words, we're looking for the opposite operation, the opposite. So when we look back at our addition and subtraction and then our multiplication and division, when we talk about the inverse operation or the opposite operation of addition is subtraction. And then the opposite of subtraction is addition. So these are inverse operations of each other. The inverse operation of addition is subtraction, and the inverse operation of subtraction is addition. It's the opposite. Same thing for multiplication and division. Multiplication and division, and then division to multiplication. Those are the inverse operations of one another. So the inverse operation of addition is not multiplication, or the inverse operation for division is not subtraction. The inverse is addition to subtraction or multiplication to division and vice versa. All right, so that's what we needed to know from there. Now we're going to talk about the different types of one-step equation. So the types of problems that you'll see. So the types of problems you'll see, the very first one being addition. So types of problems is the very first one is addition. So sometimes you'll see a problem written like this. There's 52 plus x equals 75. So this is an addition problem because you see the addition right in the center there. So that means it's adding. So then you need to use the inverse operation to solve. So use the inverse to solve. This is important. We're using the inverse operation to solve it. Which means if this is addition, the inverse would be subtraction. So the idea is when you're solving these equations, you want x to be alone. We don't want anything next to x. So the inverse operation to this would be subtraction. And then we want to get rid of this 52 because we want x to be by itself. So we want to get rid of 52. So to get rid of 52, we're going to subtract 52 from this side. And then whatever we do to one side of an equation, you also have to do on the other side of an equation. Because an equation means that they're equal. So that means whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other since they're equal. I can't just take away from one side because then that would not make it equal anymore. Whatever I have to do to one side, I have to do to both. So then 52 minus 52, this looks like something we've talked about before, and that is called a zero pair. So this is what we call a zero pair. And once you have a zero pair, it no longer exists anymore because it makes zero. So then you're just left with x equals, and then we solve what is 75 minus 52? That is 23. So then my final answer is x equals 23. Now we're going to try a different problem. We're going to try a subtraction problem. So now this is a problem where it's subtraction first, and then we have to do the inverse of subtraction. So let's say we have the problem x minus 35 equals 63. So here we do not want this minus 35. We want to get rid of it because we want x to be completely by itself. We want x to be alone. So let me write that down as a note here. We want x alone. That's the whole objective of solving equations. We want x alone. We don't want anything next to it. So in order to get rid of this, we have to do the inverse operation, which would be addition. So then we're going to add 35 on both sides, because both sides, to keep it equal, we have to do it to both. This makes another zero pair, like we did before, so zero pair. So then now this made zero, so you're left with just x equals, and then 63 plus 35, which equals 98. So that's how you do adding and subtracting. These are the two more so easier types of problems. Now let's talk about multiplication. Multiplication. So let's say we have our problem 4x equals 60. Now, just remember when you have a number next to a variable like this, that is multiplication. So this is 4 times x. So then if we're doing the inverse operation of this, so the opposite, we have to divide. And we want to divide by whatever number is next to x, because that's what we want to get rid of. We want x to be alone. The number that's stopping it from being alone is 4. So that's what we want to divide. We want to divide by 4 on both sides. And then when you do 4x over 4, this makes something else that we're used to seeing that is called a giant 1. And so we don't want that 4. So now that 4 makes a 1. We're left with just x equals 60 divided by 4, which is 15. And then the last type of problem we're going to talk about is division. So the last type of problem is division. And let's say we have the problem x over 5 equals 13. Now remember, whenever you have a fraction, that means it's division. You're dividing. Fractions and division are the same thing. So we want to get x alone. The reason why x is not alone right now is because of this 5 here. So let's figure out, how do we get rid of that? Well, we need to know the inverse. So the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So instead of dividing by 5, we want to multiply by 5. This becomes 5 divided by 5, which is just a 1, so they cancel each other out. So when you are multiplying by the same denominator, these numbers cancel out because it just equals 1. 5 divided by 5 is just 1, so then you're left with x equals, and then if you multiply by 5 on that side, you also have to multiply 5 on the other side to keep it balanced and equal. 13 times 5 is 65. So then our final answer is 65. Sorry, I haven't been putting squares around my final answers. So these are all your final answers. So remember, the important thing about this, to summarize, is how do you solve one-step equations? So our summary would be, you solve one-step equations by using the inverse operation. And if you need to remember those inverse operations, take a look at the top of your notes. Thank you for following along. If you have any questions, feel free to ask your teacher. Bye.